He tightened the cuffs until she bled. Then she said, "Call my mother." When Colonel Dana Pierce walked in, the room forgot how to breathe. If you believe truth should outlast intimidation, hit like and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365, because what happens next changes everything. Under Tech Lux's lights, phones slept. Amara Pierce kept her list against a box of solar cells, reading part numbers like coordinates. Planning to buy or just browsing? The clerk asked, straightening a row she hadn't touched. AP Chem, Amara said. Solar conversion rig, your site said you had the diodes. From the next aisle, a woman in a camel coat gasped. My phone, it's gone. She scanned faces and landed on Amara, pointing. Her, she's been circling. The manager appeared, badged Trent Mallory. We'll handle this, Ms. Whitmore. 2 mall guards pushed through the doors. Hands, the big one said. Amara lifted them because she knew the script. Keep your hands where they can see them. Speak like a metronome. Do not gift anyone your fear. Her mother had drilled it. There's been a mistake, Amara said. Check my bag. You can do that in the office, the guard said, pinching her elbow. Leela Whitmore watched like a judge who'd already written the verdict. Her phone buzzed as they walked, missed call, broker, then went dark. The same word had flashed on her dad's phone that morning. The security office was smaller than the fear inside it. Officer Colin Rourke waited. He didn't look at Amara, just through her. What do we have? He asked Mallory. Customer says she lifted a high-end phone. We detained promptly. Policy. To the table, Rourke said, empty your pockets. She obeyed. Notebook parts, receipts. The guard dumped them, connectors skittered, pencils rolled. No phone thudded because there was no phone. Where'd you stash it? Rourke asked. I didn't take anything, Amara said. Check the cameras. Leela folded her arms. She could have passed it off. They always have a partner. The word stung. In her head, her mother's other lesson clicked. Count exits, count faces, note when they means you. Rourke pulled out handcuffs. Until we sort it out. They are not necessary, Amara said. Metal bit. He cinched a notch too far. Then one more. Pain lanced up her forearms. Sir, she said, they're cutting me. You'll live. Kids who don't take anything always survive the paperwork. Mallory tilted his chin. Record the property, we'll coordinate footage. Leela leaned toward the mirror. I hope you learned something, she said. There are consequences. Like checking the video, Amara asked. Leela's smile twitched. Precisely. Rourke smeared graphite across Amara's notebook with his thumb. AP Chem, he read. Name, Amara Pierce. Parents, Marcus and Dana. He clicked his pen. Silence stretched. Blood beaded where the cuff bit. She saw herself at 8 while her mother looped a ribbon through a metal. You keep building, her mom had said, even when they kick the scaffolding. Officer, Amara said, please loosen the cuffs. Am I hurting you? Yes, good. Maybe you'll remember that feeling next time you think about buying resistors, she said. The young guard Ben flinched. He looked at Mallory. Mallory stared back. Amara's phone buzzed again. Another missed call, broker. She pictured her father telling her not to worry about tuition because things work out. Rourke leaned close. You know what kids do when they're innocent? He asked. They don't make shows. I asked for the cameras, Amara said. He laughed. And I asked for a place in Maui. Life is disappointment. Proceed with formal detainment, Mallory asked. Rourke lifted the chain a fraction. Pain sawed. Amara tasted iron. Her mother's last text floated up, proud of you. Keep your head. If things go sideways, call me. Amara raised her chin. Call my mother. Rourke's smile widened. Oh yeah, he said. And who is mommy going to be, sweetheart President of the United States? The operations floor hummed at a low, disciplined frequency. Printers breathing, servers whispering, boots quiet out of respect. Colonel Dana Pierce stood at the end of a horseshoe table while a captain ran through a slide about cyber intrusions piggybacking on municipal Wi-Fi. She listened the way she always did, jaw set, eyes alert, fingers still, until her phone vibrated in the pocket of her blazer. Amara. She never called during school hours. Dana's chest tightened in a way armor couldn't help. 5, Dana murmured to the room, already moving. In the corridor she answered. Hey, Bug. Her daughter's voice was steady, but there was a tiny scrape under it, like a violin string nicked with a nail. Mom, I'm being detained at Tech Lux. They put me in handcuffs. They won't check the cameras. Dana didn't flinch. She listened for location, numbers of personnel, tone. Are the cuffs tight? A beat. Too tight. They're cutting my wrists. Stay still. Use your metronome voice. Don't argue law. Ask for processes. Give them nothing extra. She was already turning back into the glass-walled ops room. I'm coming. 25. She ended the call and snapped into motion. Major Sloan, she said to the JAG officer scribbling notes at the back. Tech Lux at Northgate Mall. Probable wrongful detainment of a minor. I need you en route with templates for evidence preservation and civil rights advisories. Yes, ma'am. Rodriguez, she called to the military police captain. Meet there with a medic. Document every mark on my daughter's wrists before anyone can misremember. Rodriguez didn't ask why a domestic mall incident required military precision. She'd served under Dana long enough to know the answer. They protect their own, and they do it by the book. Dana crossed to her commanding officer's door and tapped once. General Abrams looked up. "Colonel, family matter, I'm taking personal leave for the afternoon. A situation that may escalate to civil complaint. I'll keep you appraised." He read her face and didn't waste rank on argument. "Go." In her office, Dana stripped off her name tape and ribbons and swapped the uniform for a plain burgundy blouse and dark jeans. The change was tactical. Civas let her see who people were when they believed she had no authority to make their choices cost. She pulled her hair into a low knot, exposed her eyes, and stared into the mirror. Her mother's voice rose from another decade. "You can be reasonable and still be dangerous. Let them underestimate the outfit. Never let them underestimate you." Phone buzz. Unknown number. "Keep this quiet," and she walks. Win-win. A link followed, a generic NDA template and a figure that looked like money trying to shove a hand over her mouth. Dana took a breath. She forwarded the text to Sloan with one line, "Preserve metadata, possible interference." Then she forwarded it to Rodriguez, "Log as intimidation." Another buzz, Marcus. She watched his name strobe and didn't pick up. That morning he'd said, "Tuition's covered, don't stress the future." On his nightstand, his phone had flashed a word she hated in proximity to promises. Broker. Later. First, the child whose wrists were bleeding. She walked fast past the flags, down the stairs, out to a government sedan she signed out without small talk. Engine on, route mapped in her head. South on Memorial, cut across Holcomb, park near the delivery bay to avoid the media entrance. She drove the way she briefed, calm with contingencies. At a light she called Sloan again. "Chain of custody, cameras, entry logs. If anyone breathes on a hard drive, I want a record of the exhale." "Yes, ma'am. I'll have the preservation letters printed. PD friendly or firm?" "Start friendly, stay firm. We're not there to embarrass their badges until their badges embarrass themselves." And Captain Rodriguez, "Document, no commentary. We don't need adjectives. We need angles, timestamps, measurements." She hung up and let the city flick past. The pawn shop with the neon pistol, the daycare bright with chalk dust, the bar where soldiers celebrated and civilians pretended not to notice their laughter carried an edge. Her hands softened around the wheel. In the windshield she saw Amara at 8, at 12, at 15, standing in new shoes, holding a microphone, holding a soldering iron, holding her breath. Dana had taught her the script for traffic stops and hallway searches because love in America sometimes sounded like procedure. She pulled into Northgate's side lot and killed the engine. Her pulse slowed the way it always did when there was work she understood. She texted Sloan and Rodriguez on site and slipped the phone into her back pocket. Inside the mall, the air was cinnamon and freon. The guard at the entrance glanced up and straightened by instinct alone. Authority is a dialect your bones learn before your mouth does. Dana clocked exits, cameras, fire pole stations, witness clusters. Tech Lux glowed 3 storefronts ahead, a cube of glass and expensive boredom. A teenager filming with her phone caught Dana's peripheral. They cuffed a girl, the kid said to no one and everyone. For a phone, she was just buying parts. "Which way to security?" Dana asked, polite as Sunday. "Back hallway, left of the food court. Door says employees only." "Thank you." Dana moved, a current pressed into a narrow channel. The back corridor was colder, louder with mechanical noise. She caught her reflection in a convex safety mirror. A woman not in uniform who still read as uniform, back flat, steps efficient. She let her shoulders loosen a fraction, put a little civilian in her gait. Sloan texted, "PD notified. Chief en route. Rodriguez, medic 5 minutes out." Dana clicked her tongue once, a habit from ranges and raids, then put her hand on the knob of a metal door with a wired glass window at eye level. On the other side, movement, an officer's shoulder, a manager's suit, the pale flash of a young girl's wrist wrapped in steel. She opened the door and stepped in. The room forgot how to breathe. "Hands off my daughter," Dana said, voice level, carrying. Now, Officer Colin Rourke didn't turn. He finished writing a time on a clipboard, then looked up as if she'd just interrupted a quiet lunch. "You are Dana Pierce, mother, who's in charge of this room?" Rourke tapped his chest. "Right now, me." "Then you know your own handbook," Dana said. "Juveniles are not to be restrained absent immediate threat or flight. If restraints are used, circulation checks every 10 minutes. Parents or guardians notified at first contact. You failed at 2 out of 3 and were past 10. "That's so," he leaned on the desk, amused. "And how would you know what my handbook says?" "Because I helped write the one the military police use," she said, "and yours is a cut-and-paste cousin, also because I can read." She flicked her eyes at Amara's wrists. Skin puffed and red under metal. "Keys, now." Ben, the younger guard, looked at Rourke. Rourke didn't move. "We're in the middle of an investigation," he said. "She's a suspect." "She's 16, Dana said. "You've got no property, no video, and the only eyewitness is the woman who keeps pointing instead of producing proof." She shifted, making space at the table with 2 fingers. "MS. Whitmore, correct? I'm sure you're eager to be helpful." Leela flinched, chin high. "I'm cooperating. That girl was hovering. I felt unsafe." "Feeling is not evidence," Dana said. "Cameras are, Mr. Mallory." The manager cleared his throat. "We, always cooperate with law enforcement." "Terrific," Dana said. "Then pull footage from the front counter and the case by the accessories wall. I want a live review in this room, not later, not after someone edits out the part where my daughter asks you to check it." Rourke smiled without warmth. "You don't get to make demands, Ms. Pierce." "Mrs. Dana said. "And I didn't make a demand. I cited a process. You're detaining a minor. Process protects both of us." He let the smile fall. "Here's my process. She was seen near a missing phone. She gets cuffed while we sort it out." Near is not a crime, cuffs are not neutral, and sorted out isn't a legal standard. Dana stepped closer to Amara, lowering her voice but not the blade in it. "Bug, breathe with me, 4 in, 4 out." Amara's jaw unclenched. "They're too tight," she said, not as a plea but as a measurement. "Document," Dana said, and Rodriguez, the MP captain who'd slipped in so quietly only a soldier would have noticed, lifted her camera and began to shoot. Close-ups of wrists, the angle of the metal, the faint smear of blood on the table edge. No adjectives. Only angles, timestamps, measurements. "Who invited the army to a mall?" Rourke muttered. "No one," Dana said. "And the army isn't here. A mother is. The army is at work, same as you should be." Mallory turned to the wall monitor, typing his credentials with hands that wanted to look calm. Dana's gaze passed over him and landed, just briefly, on the reflection in the glass of his phone angled under the desk. His thumbs moved fast. A message flashed and faded. "Wipe S3 S7 now." "Mr. Mallory," Dana said without turning her head, "if you text anyone to touch a single pixel, I will personally see you deposed under oath about what pixels were touched and why." He startled. "Guilty loud in a quiet room. I was telling my assistant to bring the cables." "Then you won't mind showing the message," Dana said. He swallowed. "We're on a corporate system, privacy policies, public space, company phone, evidence context," said Sloan, the JAG major, coming in with a leather folder and a printer-worn packet of preservation notices. He slid them to Rourke, to Mallory, to Leela. "Sign to acknowledge receipt. You're on notice not to alter, delete, or tamper. It protects you as much as anyone." Rourke pushed the papers back with one finger. "This is a police scene. We don't take orders from." His eyes cut down, landed on Sloan's badge, then on Rodriguez's camera, then on Dana's face, which hadn't moved. "We're not ordering," Sloan said, pleasant as a bank teller. "We're cooperating. The chief has been notified. He's on his way." "Keys," Dana repeated. Rourke held her stare a full 3 seconds longer than a smart man would, then jerked his chin at Ben. "Check the fit." Ben stepped in, relief and fear warring on his freckles. He clicked the cuff 1 notch looser. Amara's breath went out like a valve turning. Rodriguez's camera caught the new spacing. "Better?" Dana asked. "Yes," Amara said softly. "Good, now we're going to do this by the book," Dana said to the room. "Footage up, time stamps matched. Chain of custody logged. MS. Whitmore gives a statement containing facts, not feelings. Officer, you refrain from editorializing about kids these days or anyone's kind while you're on record." Rourke's mouth tightened. "What did you say your name was?" "Pierce, Dana. You one of those federal types who think they run the world?" he asked. "I run what I'm responsible for," she said. "Today that's a 16-year-old who came here to buy parts for a science project and is bleeding on your table." Mallory finally got the feed. The monitor blinked, split into quadrants. Front till center aisle, accessories wall, doorway. Dana angled between the screen and the room, a conductor settling an orchestra before the first note. "Rewind to 5 minutes before MS." Whitmore noticed her phone was missing, she said. They watched people appear and rewind back into their phones, into their bags, into the past. The cursor slowed, then crawled forward. There was Amara checking a list, comparing it to a tray of connectors. There was Leela finishing a text, setting her bag on the counter, tilting the open mouth toward herself as she reached for a lipstick. "Freeze there," Dana said. Mallory froze. "Advance by frames," Sloan said. 3 clicks. Click, click, click. Leela's hand dipped. A rectangular shadow slid into the bag like a coin into a slot. The room went very still. Leela folded her arms tighter. I was rearranging." "Play normal speed," Dana said. The time stamp rolled. Leela glanced around, closed the bag, lifted it, took 2 steps away, stopped, and made a perfect theater gasp toward the universe. "My phone," had said in real time. In playback the echo landed with a different weather. Rourke shifted, annoyed less at the truth than at the way truth undermined routine. So maybe she forgot she put it there, he said. People forget. People forget, Dana agreed. Cameras don't. You don't know what you don't know, Leela snapped. She could have what? Dana asked. Teleported into your purse. Rodriguez kept filming. Sloane kept writing. Ben swallowed hard. Amara wiped her cheek with her shoulder. Mom, she said quietly, my hands. Dana nodded once. Officer, remove the cuffs. We're not done, Rourke said. No, Dana said. We are finally beginning. He took the keys from Ben, moved behind Amara, and hesitated, some stubborn atom of pride refusing to rotate. Then metal opened with a small mechanical sigh. Blood rushed back into skin. Silence held for a beat, then another. Somewhere outside, a kid laughed. The monitor hummed. And then, from the corner where Leela's designer bag sat like a prop on a velvet chair, a bright, foolish sound cut the room, a ringtone burbling to life. Leela lunged for the purse, fingers shaking, face gone paper white as the phone inside kept singing the fact everyone had just watched. The ringtone burbled through the room like a comedian who didn't know the joke was over. Leela Whitmore clawed inside her purse, cheeks draining to hotel sheet white, and fished out the very phone she'd sworn had vanished. No one spoke. The sound thinned, then died. Somewhere the mall's PA announced a sale on scented candles. Must have slipped in, Leela said, voice brittle. I was distracted. Anyone could. People misplace things, Dana said evenly. Accusations should not. Sloane tapped his pen. MS, Whitmore, I'll need your statement, including where you last handled the device before discovering it was missing. Please note that the video shows you placing it in your bag. Leela's gaze snapped to the monitor. That's a weird angle, she protested. Could be, what did you call it, parallax? Parallax doesn't change rectangles into fish, Sloane said. You dropped a phone into a bag. Rourke rubbed a knuckle along his jaw, eyes flinty. Okay, so the lady made a mistake. Doesn't clear the kid. Maybe there was an accomplice. Or maybe the only crime here is the grammar of your hunch, Dana replied. Run the rest. Mallory advanced the feed. They watched Amara move like a checklist, not a thief checking part numbers, nodding, jotting. They watched Leela discover her loss point perform. Ben's throat worked. Ma'am, he began, then stopped when Rourke's head tilted a warning. Say it, Dana said, not kindly but not unkindly either. Ben's fingers worried the edge of his ID. We get told to keep eyes on certain shoppers. Different stores call it different things. He stared at the floor. Just patterns. What patterns? Sloane asked. Urban look, teen clusters, people who don't look like they can afford it. He winced at his own words. I'm not proud of it. Leela exhaled a laugh like ice cracking. Oh please, I felt unsafe. Safety isn't racist. Safety without evidence is superstition, Dana said. And superstition with handcuffs is harm. Amara flexed her freed hands, wrists ridged where the metal had bitten. Her phone buzzed on the table, a flurry of notifications, group chats lighting up like a carnival. She glanced, then looked away. Dana saw the flinch. What? Dana asked softly. Amara turned the screen. A screenshot from 7th grade whirled through the chat. A blurred rumor about lip gloss from the drugstore. An old lie born from a dare and a jealous girl. Over it, a username she knew too well. Jade NG12. A caption, crazy how patterns repeat. Jade, her best friend who slept on her floor after breakups and ate ramen at her counter and borrowed her homecoming dress. The phone buzzed again. Jade, I didn't mean it like that, it's just what people are saying, don't be mad. Amara swallowed anger like a pill without water. They're already writing the ending, she said. Let them, Dana said. We'll write the record. Crossed his arms. Here's a record, I respond to calls. Lady says phone is gone, kid is near it, we detain, we ask questions, that's not prejudice, that's police work. Then why not check the video when she asked? Dana shot back. Why tighten cuffs until she bled? Because kids lie, he said. Everybody lies. Cameras don't, Sloane said again. Not until someone tells them to. The screen glitched. Just a hiccup, a single stutter, then another. The picture smeared for a blink, colors pulling, faces turning to watercolor. Mallory's hand slid under the desk again, casual like a man reaching for gum. Don't, Dana said without looking. Whatever you think you're saving yourself from, you're not. I'm not doing anything, Mallory said, voice too smooth. Rodriguez drifted behind the desk and angled her camera toward the tower's status panel. Tiny LEDs pulsed. A maintenance window flashed. Segment purge S3 S7 pending. Sloane's pen stopped. There it is, he said quietly. Attempted deletion. Rourke's head snapped toward Mallory. You touching evidence. It's an automatic cache, Mallory said quickly. System cycles, it's like taking out the trash. On the minute we asked you to play it, Sloane asked. How punctual of your trash. Ben went pale. We've been told to clear the floor footage every 2 hours to save space, he offered. Voice small, especially when there's incidents, not to keep anything that could confuse liability. Dana's eyes cut to Mallory. Who told you that? Corporate, Mallory said. Policy. Names, Sloan said. Emails, you're going to print the retention schedule and the memos that created it. Then you're going to stop that purge. Mallory's jaw pulsed. I don't have that access. Then call the person who does, Dana said, and put it on speaker. Another stutter crawled across the screen. A pixelated Amara blurred, then sharpened. The maintenance window ticked from pending to executing. Rodriguez shot the status page. Got it, she murmured. Rourke slammed a palm on the desk. Stop the wipe, he barked, forgetting that moments ago he'd treated footage like optional. That's evidence. Mallory stabbed at keys. It's not responding. Sweat slicked his hairline. It's remote. From where? Dana asked. Mallory hesitated just long enough to confess. Store office, back of house. Sloan was already dialing. Security, this is Major Sloan. Freeze the Tech Lux office now. No one in or out. Through the wired glass window, Dana saw two silhouettes bolt down the corridor toward the retail floor. One tall, one compact, both in Tech Lux blue. A third shape peeled off the opposite way, carrying something like a hard drive against his side. Rodriguez, Dana said. On it, the captain answered, stepping into the hall with a medic's bag in one hand and a camera in the other, boots suddenly loud. Inside the room, the monitor hiccuped again. The timeline scrub bar slid and the squares labeled S3 through S7 went gray, little tombstones where moving pictures had lived. Ben made a sound in his throat. Leela stared at the blank boxes like maybe grief could be performed too. Amara's phone buzzed yet again. A fresh text from Jade. Can we talk? I swear I didn't send the screenshot to the blog. What blog? Amara whispered. Sloan's phone rang over her question. Another number, another voice, chief en route. 5 minutes, he nodded at Dana. Hold the line, Dana said, eyes on the gray squares. Everything that matters about today is either on a screen or in someone's spine. The cursor crept to the edge of the surviving segment. One last frame held, Leela's fingers, the purse, Amara's profile sharp with teenage certainty, and then the feed lurched, sputtered, and began to die. Don't blink, told the room, as if will alone could stop a digital eraser. The monitor flickered, hiccuped, and like a lie learning to cover its tracks started to go dark. The monitor dimmed like a heartbeat losing nerve, and then the door blew open on a gust of command. Freeze that system, said a man with iron gray hair and a jacket that read chief. Two uniformed officers slid past him toward the Tech Lux tower like a surgical team going for a clog. Chief Garvey, Sloan said, extending the packet. Preservation notices. Attempted remote purge from the store office. Garvey skimmed a page, didn't bother hiding disgust. Copy IT. Lock their LAN. Sergeant, pull the line at the switch if you have to. Sir, the sergeant said, already kneeling at a panel. Rourke stiffened. We had it under control. Garvey looked at Amara's wrists at the ridge of angry red where metal had lived. Did you? A paramedic shouldered in behind him, snapping open a kit. Let's see those hands, sweetheart. Amara flinched at sweetheart, then nodded. The medic's touch was efficient. Compression lines, superficial laceration, probable bruising. Documenting, he said and lifted his phone to photograph. Ma'am, you'll be sore, keep them elevated tonight. Rodriguez filmed the filmers. No adjectives, angles, timestamps, measurements. Outside, the corridor had filled with faces and phones. Dana could feel the light of a dozen lenses pressing through the wired glass, heat from an audience building its own weather system. Someone in the crowd said, that's the girl. And another voice, get her name right. Officer Rourke, Garvey said, eyes flat. Explain the cuffs. Detainment pending investigation, Rourke said, coiled into syntax like it might save him. Restraints necessary to prevent. Prevent what? Garvey asked, a kid from finishing her shopping list. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to, Bodicam. Rourke's hand went to a silent square on his chest. Technical issue, reported last week. Garvey didn't look at him when he said, Quartermaster's log shows your unit passed function this morning at 0831. He let the time hang like a weight. We'll review your reports. Stand by. Mallory, sweating, tried to slide toward the door. I should assist my staff. You should stand right there, Garvey said, without looking. Corporate counsels invited too, since they seem to enjoy touching evidence. He turned back to Amara. Something softened under the badge. Miss Pierce, do you want water? A break? Amara glanced at her mother. Take the water, Dana said. Then we finish. For a heartbeat, one of those inhalations around which lives Pivot, Dana saw a kitchen 10 years ago. Marcus flipping pancakes shaped like constellations while Amara pointed with a sticky fork. That's Orion, he'd said, and Amara, serious, had corrected him. Actually, that's Cassiopeia. Pride had filled the room like Sunday sun. Dana, the voice came from the doorway. Marcus himself, tie wrong, breath short, eyes going everywhere but the cuffs on the table. He had the look men wear when their first move was late and every move after that makes noise. You shouldn't be back here, Garvey began. My wife, Marcus said. My daughter. Dana didn't give him a smile to land on. You got my messages. Yeah, he swallowed. Can we talk 2 minutes outside? We're in the middle of something. It is the middle, that's why we should end it. A folded sheet trembled in his hand. There's an offer, a good one. They'll apologize. They'll pay no admission of whatever. But she signs, we sign, everyone goes home. NDA, Sloane translated, dry, of course. Marcus lowered his voice like privacy could be willed into a room with cameras. Dana, tuition, we talked about how. We didn't talk, she said. You said not to worry, that's not talk, that's anesthesia. His jaw ticked. I've been juggling markets, that's all, nothing illegal. Markets, she repeated, tasting the word. The missed call broke her, the way his eyes skated when money took its clothes off and did math in front of them. Mom, Amara said quietly, I don't want their hush. I know, Dana said. Marcus pressed the folded paper at her anyway. It doesn't have to be a war, take the win, protect her. Garvey cleared his throat. Mr. Pierce, you can wait outside or take a seat. Interference will end with you outside. Fine, Marcus said, deflating. He backed into the hallway and into a wall of phones. The crowd recognized a father's face and hushed for a different reason. Inside, the sergeant popped a cable and the Tech Lux feed steadied, gray tombstones halting mid-funeral. We have enough, Sloane said. We have what matters. What matters, Dana said, looking at her daughter's wrists, is that when she asked for the cameras, someone laughed. Rourke stared at a point beyond all of them. We respond to calls, he said, stubborn as a lamppost. We don't get to pick who lies. Neither do we, Dana said. That's why we keep records. A new voice cut through the room, a woman in a tailored suit, heels biting authority into tile. Jennifer Klein, corporate counsel for Northgate Holdings, were cooperating fully. She smiled the way polished stones do. We're prepared to discuss terms that will make everyone whole. Whole, Dana repeated. Spell it. Monetary compensation. Training, a public statement. Training doesn't stitch skin, Dana said. And my daughter is not your PR tourniquet. Klein's smile held. You'll find our offer generous. Sloane slid her a card. Find our discovery aggressive. Garvey didn't look at either of them, he looked at Rourke. Badge and weapon. Rourke blinked. Chief, pending review, Garvey said, as if they were the only two humans in the world. You'll get your say. Right now you get a chair and a union rep. There is a sound to surrender when it's metal. Rourke unhooked his holster, set the pistol on the desk, then the tinned oval that meant he was allowed to walk into rooms and decide where fear sat. The desk took both with a small, satisfying thud. Outside, the crowd exhaled. Inside, Amara's shoulders lowered a fraction like someone had opened a window. Dana's phone buzzed in her back pocket. Unknown. The subject line previewed itself with the brazenness of a bad thought. Margin call urgent. She didn't open it. Not yet. Another buzz, same sender. New subject, Pierce account, negative balance. Under it, a thumbnail of a screenshot with numbers in red, the kind of red you don't use unless you want to hurt the eye. Dana kept her face closed and slid the phone where only she could see. The email expanded. A brokerage statement with her husband's name at the top, a number she couldn't unsee at the bottom, a row of calls from the morning stamped broker. From the corridor, Marcus's voice, too bright, too quick, floated in. It's all fine, we're fine. Garvey looked up from the badge on the desk to the mother by the table to the man behind the glass. Are we? Dana said to no one in particular, while her screen bled red and the chief said, very quietly, Officer Rourke, step aside. The ER smelled like bleach and surrender. Fluorescence hummed hard enough to sand the edges off voices. Nurse slid Amara onto a gurney and parked her behind a curtain where the world came in stripes. Shoe soles, wheels, the hem of a white coat. Hands, the nurse said, and Amara lifted them. Purple ridges flared where metal had lived. The nurse's breath caught. Documenting. Flash, another. Angles, timestamps, measurements. Dana stood just inside the curtain opening, a hinge between her daughter and everyone else. She'd washed them all off her face, but not off her posture. A doctor arrived, sleeves rolled, eyes kind but clinical. I'm Dr. Aisha Patel. Compression lines, superficial lacerations, possible nerve irritation. She murmured as if reading a weather report none of them had ordered. We'll clean, dress, and photo, you'll be sore. Ice 10 minutes on, 10 off. Elevate tonight. And scars? Dana asked. Not if we can help it, Dr. Patel said. She glanced at Amara's t-shirt, the NASA logo cracked from laundry and life. Science kid. AP Chem, Amara said. Solar conversion project. Dr. Patel smiled like the only gentle thing in the room. I hope you blow the judges away. Outside the curtain, the waiting room TV did what waiting room TVs do, tried to turn hurt into programming. When Dana stepped out to call Sloane, a graphic caught the corner of her eye. Retail theft surge. Teen detained at Northgate, and the face under the chyron was Leela Whitmore's, mascara perfect, voice trembling on cue. I truly felt unsafe, Leela told the camera, touching the corner of her eye like truth lived there. It's not about race. It's about rising crime. The anchor nodded solemnly. Sources say bodycam malfunction is under review. Our station reached out to the officers' union. Dana glanced at the lower third in the corner. Producer, Evan Brooks. She knew the name from a fundraiser where he joked too close to the line and called it wit. In the hospital's flicker light, his editorial choices were a scalpel turned backward. The clip cut away from the critical frame at Tech Lux, landed on Amara's silhouette with the word suspect ghosting the edge of the screen. The phone in Dana's pocket vibrated again, the email she hadn't opened forcing its preview up like a bruise. Margin call urgent. She exhaled long and even and sent Sloan a text instead. Union moving. Producer on smear, Evan Brooks, catalog segments. Sloan's reply came fast, noted. Pattern likely. Marcus sat slumped under a painting of lilies that had never seen water. When Dana approached, he stood as if the floor had jolted him. How is she? Cleaned and dressed, pain later. She kept her voice steady because someone had to. He scrubbed his face. I didn't mean to at the mall push. You pushed a piece of paper with a price for silence, Dana said. You meant it. His mouth tightened. We can't fight City Hall, Dana. We can't fight camera crews and unions, and we've both fought worse than cameras. She angled her head at the TV. Leela's voice bled through. I never wanted a scene. We fought for a country that should be able to tell a thief from a kid buying diodes. He swallowed. Tuition. Not now. They looked at the TV because it was easier than looking at each other. Evan's segment spliced B-roll of shattered display cases from some other mall onto a line about Northgate concerns, pipes it under Leela's spoon-fed sorrow. The frame where Leela dropped the phone, gone. The sentence where Amara asked for the cameras, cut mid-syllable. A voiceover. In an era of retail anxiety, mistakes happen. Dana could feel the edit points like sutures in the truth. Across the room, a man in a contractor's hoodie said to no one, girl should have just said sorry, and a woman in scrubs muttered, for what? Amara's curtain rattled. Dr. Patel stepped out, handed Dana a printout and a look. She's brave, the doctor said. Braver than most of the adults I see. Back in the cubicle, Amara watched silent captions walk across Leela's face on a muted phone screen. Her own phone buzzed in a staccato panic. Group chats boiling. Classmates screenshotting the Chiron. One message blazed from Jade. OMG, this is getting big. I didn't send that to the blog. People are just asking questions. Don't be mad. What blog? Amara asked, ash dry. Dana's phone answered before Jade did. A news alert, local commentary site. Is Northgate teen an activist looking for viral moment? A thumbnail of Amara's shoulder turned into a story about ambition, about clout, about everything except the truth framed on a monitor and nearly erased. Amara's jaw set. They're going to take my project apart, she said. They're going to call it charity when anyone helps me. They're going to do what they do, Dana said. We'll do what we do. What if what we do makes it worse? Amara whispered. What if I'm the girl with the wrists and not the girl with the rig? Dana touched the bandage with a fingertip like blessing. You are exactly who you were this morning and also someone new. That's how scars work. You get to decide the story they tell. Dr. Patel returned with discharge forms and 2 white foam ice packs that looked like props in a play about good intentions. Follow up in a week, she said. Call sooner if you feel numbness. They wheeled Amara past the waiting room. Every phone they passed was a screen within a screen showing a version of her that didn't have a last name. Only a role, detained teen. Someone lifted their chin at Dana like recognition. She kept walking. Outside, the air had that late afternoon temperature where heat and evening bargain. A handful of cameras idled across the street. Evan Brooks stood among them, headset crooked, eyes everywhere. He saw Dana and straightened like a man seeing the wave he didn't predict. Colonel Pierce, he called, as if he'd earned the rank by pronouncing it. Any comment? Run the whole tape, Dana said. Then call me. He smiled like a receipt. We have what we need. Not yet, Dana said. In the car, Marcus hovered, hands useless. Home? He asked. Home, Dana said, even as her phone vibrated again and again. Sloan, Rodriguez, a number she didn't know. Amara leaned her head against the window, watching the city rip past in reflective strips, billboards, pawn shops, the water tower with the chipped paint. Dana's phone dinged. A new email subject rolled up the glass of the screen like a tide you couldn't fight. Brenner Science Scholarship, application status update. Amara blinked at the bolded line, thumb hovering, then tapped. The message unfolded itself in polite legalese. Dear MS Pierce, thank you for your outstanding submission to the Brenner Scholarship Program. Due to recent questions regarding character and community impact, the committee will defer final consideration of your application pending further review. We appreciate your understanding. No signature from a person, just the committee. The ice pack in Amara's lap hissed where her grip tightened. "They're deferring me," she said, voice small and sharp at the same time. "For character." Dana reached across the console, found her daughter's hand through gauze and cold. She opened her mouth to answer, and saw in the rearview a car sliding into their lane too fast, too close, headlights flashing, a horn cut into Morse. Long, long, long. Someone leaned out the window and shouted a word that had nothing to do with character and everything to do with target. Dana's foot touched the brake. The headlight washed the cabin white. The SUV swerved in front of them and braked hard, horn punching the night in ugly syllables. A man leaned out the passenger window and threw a soda that burst against the windshield, syrup sliding down like a slow blind. He shouted a word Dana had memorized in a different century and refused to make room for in this one. "Plate," she said, steady. Amara called it out. Dana repeated it into Rodriguez's voicemail. "Gray sedan, partial plate 62K, headed east off Memorial, possible harassment related to Northgate incident." She flipped the wipers twice, cleared the sugar into streaks, and let the idiot dart away. They turned onto their street and saw it before the headlights found the driveway, the front door bleeding red. Paint slashed across the wood in letters so large even the dark could read. A second smaller line below it, "Drop IT," ran down like tears. Marcus gasped. Dana didn't. Parked, put on the hazards, and told Amara stay inside. Amara opened the door anyway. No, they stood shoulder to shoulder staring at the vandalism like it was a mirror that had finally told the truth about someone else. Dana took a picture, then another with the porch light on, then one with a quarter at the edge for scale. Angles, timestamps, measurements. "Get the hose," she said. Now is when decent people do decent things." They washed what they could. It bled into pink and then into a stubborn bruise that clung to the grain. Amara scrubbed hard enough that foam trembled. Dana took the brush gently from her hand. "We clean, we don't erase," she said, more to herself than to her daughter. Marcus hovered with a roll of paper towels like pennants came perforated. "I'll repaint first thing," he said. "I'll make this right." "You can't paint a word out of someone else's mouth," Dana said. He flinched, eyes slick. "Dana, please, we have to think about what's next." "What's next is filing a report and replacing this door," Dana said evenly. "And then we think about what always should have been first." "Tuition," he said. "Safety," she countered. The porch light cast him in a cheap honesty. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded NDA like priests pull out prayer. "Klein called me," he said. "Corporate counsel. She said if we sign tonight, wires hit by morning, enough to cover what we need." "What we need," Dana said, slow, "or what you owe." Marcus held her stare, then looked down. "I made trades that went bad," he said, voice shrinking around the confession. "Options, leverage. It was supposed to be a bridge until the new contract. I thought I could turn it before it mattered." "Did you touch her fund?" Dana asked. He hesitated a third of a second too long. "I moved some from the 529 to checking to meet margin. I was going to put it back." Amara stared like a window had just shown her a stranger. "You used my college money to bet on a chart." "I was trying to protect your future," he said, and winced at his own choice of verb. "By gambling it," Amara said, voice flat. "By selling my name to your broker." "Don't say it like that," Marcus pleaded. "I was drowning. The NDA is a raft. We can fix everything quietly. You start fresh. No cameras, no court, no justice," Dana said. He turned to her, palms up. "We're not the system, we can't change that." He gestured at the door, the word they hadn't finished washing out. "What we can change is our house." Dana looked at the brush, at the stain it couldn't lift. "Our house is where she learns what we do when someone tries to buy our voice." "People take settlements every day," he said. "People sell all kinds of things every day," Dana answered. "Doesn't mean we join the market." Amara disappeared inside without a word and came back with her laptop. She opened a document so long the scroll bar looked exhausted. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "Receipts," Amara said. "Every time I've been followed through a store. Every time a teacher said you're so articulate like it was a surprise. Every time Jade laughed and said I was doing too much when I corrected a headline. Every time I pretended it didn't stick." She turned the screen so the porch light caught the entries. Date, place, what was said, who said it, how long it took to stop replaying at night. "If we hush now, these just stay artifacts." "Bug," Dana said softly. Amara looked at her. "I'm not selling this. Not for tuition. Not for new door. Not to make Dad's red numbers black." Marcus put a hand to his face and for a second seemed as young as the boy who had fixed her mother's car in a rainstorm and asked if she wanted coffee after. "I thought if I could get ahead of it, the world wouldn't get to you." "The world already did," Amara said, tipping her chin at the paint. The porch light stuttered. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked at a siren deciding whether to sing. Dana's phone rang with an unknown that felt familiar. She answered and hit speaker. Colonel Pierce, Klein's voice purred, shaped like a TV contract. Opportunity calls. We are prepared to increase our offer by 40%. Apology, training, a donation in Amara's name to a STEM initiative. Everyone wins. Except anyone who needs this not to happen again, Dana said. Klein's tone tightened a stitch. Let's be adults. Your daughter's scholarship committee is sensitive to controversy. Our PR team can help or not. You threatening her future? Dana asked. I'm offering to streamline it, Klein said. Also, I feel compelled to mention that certain community forums tend to interpret events uncharitably. One of our media partners is airing a segment in the morning. It would be awkward if the family had already moved on and the headlines hadn't caught up. You could save everyone the confusion. Which partner? Dana asked. Channel 7, Klein said. Producer Evan Brooks. Of course, Dana said. Midnight is my deadline, Klein added, velvet fraying. After that, the file goes to litigation. Messy, expensive, unnecessary. You're a practical woman. The call clicked dead before Dana could decide which part of practical she hated most. Marcus sagged. Dana, no, Dana said. I know the shape of a trap that calls itself a bridge. Amara closed the laptop like a verdict. I'll take loans, I'll defer, I'll crowdfund solder if I have to. I'm not signing away the right to say what happened to my body. They stood in a triangle, the geometry of a house that remembered being a home. The night pressed in. Somewhere a car crept past, not stopping, just looking. Jade texted again, I can explain. Please. Another bubble arrived on top of it from an unknown number with a photo, their front door. Tonight's paint still wet, shot from so close you could count the brush strokes. The caption, next time the windows. The can was still rolling on the porch when they realized the hiss they heard wasn't traffic. It was aerosol, very close. And the paint on the edge of the door wasn't drying, it was growing. The hiss grew louder. Fresh red bloomed over the half-washed slur like a wound reopening. Dana didn't shout. She stepped off the porch into the dark and spoke the way you speak to a shadow when you've survived real things. We see you. A figure jerked at the hedge line, thin hoodie up, can in hand. Another shape hovered by the curb, phone screen, a small blue moon. Tires chirped. The can clattered and rolled until Dana trapped it under her boot. Plate, she said. Amara called it clean this time. Dana repeated it to 911, then to Rodriguez. Malicious mischief. Bias motivation active. She clicked the porch camera app. The feed had their faces, blurred but brave enough for zoom. A door across the street opened. A man with a Marine Corps cap and a limp stepped into the porch light. You Pierce? He asked. Name's Wilson, staff sergeant retired. Word got around. What word? Dana asked. The kind that brings coffee, he said, and raised a thermos like a flag. By morning, they weren't alone. A quiet perimeter formed without anyone calling it that. 3 vets leaning against trucks with hands inside jackets that didn't need to show what they could do. 2 moms from the PTA with folding chairs and lemon bars they refused to take back. A science teacher from another school who brought a bin of diodes and said, Ours had extra, build something mean. Mr. Harrington, Amara's AP teacher, arrived in a wrinkled button-down and a look that had slept in his car. Classmates pooled money, he said, putting a box on the kitchen island, multimeters, breadboards, a soldering station still in plastic. They said you can't miss the regional, so we brought the regional to your garage. Amara took the iron like a chalice. For the first time in 24 hours, her face cracked along a different fault line. Thank you, she said, and meant it. The front door was now a statement. Someone had taped craft paper over the worst of the red. On it, kids had written in Sharpie, we believe you, check the tape, build the rig. A neighbor's 6-year-old added a crooked rocket ship, smoke puffing toward the gutter. At 10, the doorbell rang twice, fast then fast, a rhythm Dana recognized from rooms with codes. Ben stood on the stoop with a hoodie up and fear cutting the shape of his mouth. Ma'am, he said, glancing at the vet line and the moms and the rocket ship. Can I talk inside? He held out a thumb drive in a Ziploc. Black Sharpie, back up everything. Where did you get this? Dana asked. I pull maintenance on the rack sometimes, he said. There's a mirrored array for the cameras corporate pretends don't exist. I cloned before they started the purge. There's audio on one angle nobody knows about. It's not supposed to be on. And emails? Sloan asked, stepping from the dining room like he'd grown out of the wainscoting. Ben nodded. Our store Slack, memos from corporate. Phrases like reduce liability exposure and avoid retention when outcomes are ambiguous. And the meeting I recorded on my phone, Mallory telling us to watch for urban looks and teen clusters. I was shaky, but you can hear it. You know what bringing this means, Dana said. I know what leaving her in cuffs meant, he said, voice gone thin. I stood there, I can't unstand there. This is standing somewhere else. They moved to the kitchen table. Sloan handed Dana an air-gapped laptop, the color of institutional decisions. Rodriguez filmed angles, timestamps, measurements. The vets kept their backs to the window. The moms poured coffee like medicine. Mr. Harrington swept the counter of ice-pack instructions and made space for the thumb drive to take its place. The files opened like doors in a house you thought you knew. Multiple angles. The purse, the counter, the accessory wall, the doorway. Audio from a ceiling puck they'd never seen on the schematic. Clerk chatter, a manager's stage whisper. A phone call on speaker because power makes people sloppy. Pause, Sloan said. In the window labeled Seal Puck AUD, a woman's voice, bright with theater, said, "I'm at Tech Lux. It'll play better if security walks her out." Another voice, male, bored and competent. "Get footage of you looking rattled. Our segment's at 6. A name at the top of the phone screen, captured by reflection in the counter's chrome, E. Brooks. "Evan," Amara said, tasting it like something spoiled. Rodriguez didn't move. "Capture," she said, and shot the screen, then the reflective surface, then the timestamp. Ben swallowed. "There's more." In office cam, Mallory leaned toward his assistant. "Purge S3 S7 if PD asks for the floor. They never know the ceiling angles." He looked right into the lens like he loved himself too much to imagine a second eye in the room. "Jesus, Mr. Harrington said, almost a prayer. "Was I this trusting of institutions at 16? Amara didn't answer. She was staring at a smaller folder Ben had labeled policy. Inside, PDF stamped Techlux Risk MGMT. One subfolder, Customer Profiles. A chart with clip-art silhouettes and columns that pretended to be neutral appearance cues, carry items, group size, dog whistled into directives. "Who wrote this?" Dana asked. "Corporate counsel's office co-signed," Ben said. "Klein's initials are on the circulation." The doorbell rang again. A girl with perfect eyeliner stood on the step with a bouquet from a grocery store that had never learned what apology looks like. "Jade, can we talk?" she asked Amara. "Not here, please." They stood on the porch where the words under the paper still bled through like a palimpsest. Jade held the flowers somewhere between them as if scent could undo digital. "I didn't mean the caption," she said. "It was a joke. People were already saying it. I don't know. It got away." "You sent my 7th grade rumor to a blog and called it a question," Amara said, steady. "You called the mall before the mall called the cops." Jade blinked too fast to be crying. "Someone DM'd me, said if I sent context they could maybe help with Brenner. They know the committee. They said Evan's team could make you look softer." "Who?" Amara asked. Jade opened her phone with hands that had dressed for homecoming in Amara's mirror. She scrolled to a username, MKPR. The profile photo was a city skyline. The bio read, "Media facilitator." Under it, an old photo, Leela at charity gala, arm crooked through a man whose face was cropped by the algorithm. The cropping spared no one. "They sent gift cards," Jade said, "and a link that looked like a scholarship portal. I shouldn't have. I was mad you corrected me in class. I was dumb. I wanted in on whatever room decides futures." "Those rooms don't want you," Amara said, not cruel. "They want your proximity to me." Jade glanced at the paper-covered door. "I'll testify," she said. "About the DMs, about Leela at the gala. I'll give you screenshots." Amara nodded once. "Then start with deleting your caption and writing what you actually know." Jade exhaled, relieved to be told what to do. "Okay." She set the flowers down like a burden and left without hugging, which was its own truth. Inside, Dana's phone lit with an unknown number that did not feel like Klein. She answered, and a voice came in whisper, thin and professional, careful. "You don't know me," the caller said. "I don't want you to. Check Officer Rourke's personal email. He used it to join 3 forums flagged by federal partners. Phrases like clean up our streets and thin blue line means thick white fence. He posted last month about running records on kids at Northgate." "Who is this?" Dana asked. "Someone who reads logs for a living," the voice said. "Someone tired of watching bad actors hide behind good badges. Subpoena it. It'll survive the wipe he requested this morning." The line went dead. Dana stared at the phone, then at Sloan, then at the thumb drive. The room seemed to lean toward the next move. "You hear that?" Mr. Harrington said softly to no one in particular. "You can hear a road rising." On the kitchen table, the ceiling audio file kept playing, voices too sure that silence could be engineered. Leela complaining about lighting, Evan telling someone to lean into safety, the assistant asking whether the girl looked angry enough to make viewers pick sides. Rodriguez capped the camera and finally let an adjective out. "Ugly," she said. "Useful," Dana countered. "Ugly can be useful." Ben looked at the door, then at his shoes. "They're going to fire me," he said, and trembled like the can on the porch had under her boot. "Maybe worse." "One step at a time," Dana said. "Today you did a brave thing." He nodded, throat thick. "There's a scheduled systems refresh at 0200, he added, surprising even himself. "Mall servers, it wipes off-site mirrors when storage hits a threshold. They use the threshold as a window to clean heat." Sloan lifted his head. "Today, Ben nodded again. Tonight. The room drew a collective breath as if the house itself had lungs. Out front, a truck door shut and more boots found the sidewalk. The vet in the cap knocked once on the frame and said, "Ma'am, if you're going to stop a burn at 2, you're going to want a bigger bucket." Dana closed the laptop and looked at her daughter. The bandages were white, the Sharpie rockets were black, and the sky beyond the window had started to bruise. "Okay," she said. "Then we don't sleep." By midnight, the house was 2 rooms. The garage where a soldering iron breathed its thin blue ghost, and the kitchen where paper made a second kind of smoke. Amara bent over her rig, wrists bandaged, eyes bright with the kind of focus that keeps you from shaking. In the kitchen, Dana, Major Sloan, and a civil rights attorney named Elaine Washington built a different machine. Affidavits, exhibits, an emergency petition to freeze the mall's servers before the 0200 refresh Ben had warned them about. Short, sharp, undeniable, Elaine said, tapping the stack. Video stills, status panel photos, the purge window, we don't argue feelings, we argue clocks. Clocks and chain of custody, Sloan added, sliding Ben's thumb drive into an air-gapped laptop. Ben, one more time on the record. How do you know the wipe runs at 2? Ben's voice shook into the microphone. Because I said it last quarter when corporate told us to control storage volatility. They used the threshold as a broom. And why did you clone the array before the purge started today? He swallowed. Because watching her bleed and hearing them laugh felt like picking a side. Elaine's mouth flexed, the closest she got to tenderness on work nights. Good, sign here. Dana's phone lit, a video call with a judge's last name floating under it like a buoy. They gathered around the screen. A tired woman in a black cardigan looked back at them from a book-lined office. Make this quick and clean, the judge said. I've seen my share of accidental deletions. Elaine laid it out like a bridge. Timestamps, purge screen, corporate phrases that meant nothing until you heard them next to a girl's wrists. Sloan held up stills from the ceiling puck, the reflection that framed E. Brooks on a caller ID. Ben swore in a voice that sounded 16 and 60 at once. The judge leaned closer when the purge panel photo filled the frame, and the refresh runs at 2 a.m. She checked a clock off camera. You have 22 minutes. Ma'am, Elaine said, we're asking for an order to preserve all electronic records on site and off, immediate service on mall security and tech lux, and authority for PD to pull the plug if IT drags its feet. The judge signed on her tablet, her stylus making a sound like a match across a box. Granted, email and fax to all named parties. Chief Garvey gets a copy too. If anyone blinks, they can explain it to me in the morning under oath. Sloan hit send. Rodriguez, already in a jacket, touched her radio. I'm wheels up, she said to the vets. You with me? Ma'am, said the Marine in the cap like the word had always meant yes. Dana followed them to the door, hand on Rodriguez's shoulder. Angles, timestamps, measurements, she said, automatic and human all at once. Back inside, Marcus hovered at the edge of the kitchen like bad weather. He put a set of keys on the table, his car, the only thing in his name that wasn't red. I closed the margin, he said quietly. He turned his phone to show a brokerage screen with numbers that had stopped bleeding. Sold what I could, called my brother to cover the rest. I'm not asking forgiveness. I'm saying I'll testify about the NDA calls, about the broker, about how scared I was of being a bad father and how I picked the worst way not to be. Amara looked up from the board in her lap, the iron cooling between her knees. You fix what you broke, she said. Then you help fix what they break. He nodded, eyes wet. Yes, ma'am. A car door thunked at the curb. Dana looked up, ready for more cameras. It wasn't a camera, it was Evan Brooks, hands empty, jaw tight, the hunted look of a man who'd realized which side of the edit he lived on. I shouldn't be here, he said at the threshold, breath fogging. I'm on contract, but I'm also not rotten yet. He pulled a folded printout from his coat. You should have this. Elaine hesitated, chain of custody. Printed from my work email, he said. Sent by Leela Whitmore to me and MKPR with the station's sales director CC'd. He tapped the subject line with one finger. Storyline notes, lean into safety, minimize purse frame. Below it, a second forward, Mallory Klein. Confirm S3, S7 cleared if PD asks for floor angles. Rename retention job to hotfix to avoid discovery. Why bring it? Dana asked. Because my name is on it now, he said, voice low. And because I have a son who watches our 6 o'clock and asks who the good guys are. Elaine snapped photos, slid the paper into an envelope and wrote across the seal. You'll swear to this later. I'll swear right now, Evan said, his hands shook. Just don't say I was brave, I was late. Sloan's phone chirped. Received at mall. IT claims read-only access, cannot halt scheduled job without corporate auth. A second ping, Garvey en route. A third, Rodriguez at server room, security stalling. Put me on with her, Dana said. Rodriguez came through breathless and clipped. Server room door is open but the cage is locked. Contractor only, says the night manager. He's calling corporate IT who is not answering. Ben stood so fast his chair tipped. There's a back panel, through the copy room. The cage is mounted to the slab but the conduit runs through a drop. Draw it, Dana said. He sketched with a Sharpie on the back of Elaine's cover sheet. A rectangle, a ventilation return. A run of conduit you could thread 2 fingers under if you were determined and very much done being small. 2 levels down, he said. You can pull the uplink at the switch and the SAN will scream but live. If you cut power wrong, you fry the array. If you pull fiber at the head, you keep it breathing but blind. Elaine checked the wall clock. 0147. Dana spoke into the phone. Rodriguez, you copy? Copy. Ben's sending a photo. Pull fiber at the head, not power. Keep the array breathing and blind. Film your hands. Count out loud. If anyone touches you, their badge number lives forever. Understood. Marcus rubbed his face, then squared his shoulders in a way Dana hadn't seen since the storm the year Amara was 5, when he held a flashlight under the sink while water tried to make a river of their kitchen. I'm going down there, he said. No, Dana said. Yes, I have 2 hands and a face they won't expect in a server room. Ben walked me through it. Ben swallowed and nodded. I can go too. No, Dana and Elaine said together. Amara's phone buzzed with a new notification, Brenner Scholarship trending. The headline below it made her wince, activist or opportunist. She turned the screen face down like a lid on something boiling. Let them trend, Dana said, eyes on the clock. We'll trend time. The house held its breath. On speaker, Rodriguez's audio turned into a second room. The scrape of a ladder, the metal whisper of a vent panel, the measured calm in a woman's voice counting inches between cable trays. Somewhere behind her, a manager huffed about liability and policies, and a vet said, very pleasantly, policy is why we came with paperwork. 0156. Elaine stood in the doorway with the envelope in her hand like a relay baton. Evan hovered. Pale, Marcus flexed the fingers that had once built a crib and today printed an apology no printer could hold. On the phone, Rodriguez said, fiber located. Blue and yellow, confirm. Ben leaned over the drawing. Blue to uplink, yellow to mirror. Copy, filming, counting, 1, 2. Static cracked the line as if the mall itself had learned to grind its teeth. Dana caught Amara's gaze and held it. 3, Rodriguez said. Blue out, mirror intact, array live. Purge halted at 91%. A breath burst from the kitchen that wasn't laughter but lived in the same neighborhood. Sloan texted Garvey, preservation achieved. Elaine tapped the judge's contact and typed order enforced. Then Sloan's phone lit again with a new sender. Only subject line visible, Pierce home, anonymous tip. He opened it. The photo bloomed across his screen. The back of their house tonight, taken from the alley window frames, the office light, the edge of a face reflected in the glass. A second photo arrived before anyone spoke. A close-up of the thumb drive on the kitchen table, captured through a zoom lens that knew what it was hunting. Who has the alley? Dana asked, voice gone very, very quiet. The vets were already moving. The house exhaled, then inhaled a different kind of air. Outside, somewhere unseen, someone's shoe scraped asphalt and the night held still like a hand over a mouth. Courtrooms have their own weather. This one ran cool, a steady courthouse air that made people sit up straighter. Amara's bandages showed at her cuffs like small white flags. Dana sat to her left, still as a loaded idea. Elaine Washington arranged exhibits with the calm of a surgeon who'd read the chart twice. Call your first witness, the judge said, voice like gravel smoothed by years. Dr. Patel, Elaine answered. On the stand, the doctor kept it clinical. Compression lines, superficial lacerations, photographic documentation, force inconsistent with any safety need. In my opinion, she said, the restraints were punitive. Cross, defense counsel rose, all silk and knives. Doctor, you didn't see the cuffs applied. I saw what they did, Patel said, unblinking. Elaine didn't linger. Ben Reynolds. Ben's oath sounded older than he did. He gripped the rail like a ship's edge. We were told to watch urban looks, teen clusters, customers who didn't look like they could afford it. Managers said to reduce liability by clearing footage if outcomes were ambiguous. His eyes flicked toward Amara and away. I stood there when she bled. That's why I brought the backup. Objection, Mallory's lawyer snapped. Hearsay and disgruntled employee. Overruled on both, the judge said. The jury will disregard adjectives and pay attention to policies. On the screen, Exhibit 12 bloomed, sealing audio, the tinny, indifferent microphone catching Leela's voice. It'll play better if security walks her out. And a man's bored reply, E. Brooks shining up from a reflective chrome edge. Defense shot forward. Move to suppress. Unauthorized recording, no expectation notice. Elaine, recording from a store-installed device used in ordinary operations. Judge, reserved, I'll hear full argument later. For today, the court will consider it for probable cause and pattern only. Then the video, the frame-by-frame of Leela dipping the phone into her bag, the purse mouth, the glance around, the performed gasp 5 minutes later, the room didn't exhale so much as relearn how. Officer Rourke, Elaine said. He came slow, chin high. Tained pending investigation. Why ignore her request to check the cameras? Discretion. Why tighten her cuffs until she bled? No visible injury at the time. Elaine slid a photo onto the screen, Amara's wrists, angry red, timestamped before the paramedic. Visible now, visible then. Rourke's mouth thinned. Bodycam malfunction. Elaine tapped a different still. The quartermaster log 0831 check, functional in all caps like a Your report says otherwise. Rourke stared past her beyond all of them. The union lawyer tugged his sleeve. He didn't sit taller, he calcified. MS, Nguyen, Elaine said next. Jade walked like she'd practiced being brave in a mirror. On the stand, she said the quiet part aloud. A DM from MKPR gift cards. A promise they knew the committee. I sent an old rumor to a blog. I regretted it the second I saw her wrists. She lifted a hand. I have the messages. Defense tried sympathy like a short coat. Teenage mistakes, Your Honor. No foundation for corporate conspiracy. Foundation is in Exhibit 19, Elaine said. And up came the email chain Evan had delivered, storyline notes, lean into safety. Confirm S3 S7 cleared if PD asks. Klein and Mallory's names like fingerprints you couldn't wipe off marble. Sidebar, Klein said, suddenly on her feet at counsel table. Hand half raised like a lifeguard about to blow a whistle. The judge looked over her glasses. Now, Klein smiled with a practiced softness. For efficiency. Later, the judge said, MS Pierce. The courtroom thinned to Dana and the microphone. I've served this country in places where the rules were written in dust, she said. I know what it looks like when power stops checking itself. My daughter asked for camera, she got a laugh and a tighter cuff. And what do you want from this court? Elaine asked. Not theater, Dana said. Process, accountability with a half-life longer than a news cycle. When it was Amara's turn, the room got very quiet. She told it like data, the list, the diodes, the accusation, the ask, the pain. I knew not to move fast, I knew which words wouldn't help, I asked for the tape. She touched her bandage. They preferred a story. Defense tried a smile that hadn't listened. You've been active online, has that? Active at science fairs, Amara said. Active at school, active at breathing while handcuffed. Silence again, the good kind. Recess, the judge said at last. Back in 20. Counsel at sidebar. In the hall, the courthouse air shifted to coffee and whispers. Klein appeared as if the building made her with the baseboards. 5 minutes, she said, and led them to a small conference room with a frosted window that remembered names. She put a folder on the table and slid it forward with 2 fingers. 7 figures, she said. A scholarship in MS, Pierce's name. Training, policy review, no admission of wrongdoing, mutual non-disparagement, NDA airtight. Elaine didn't touch it. And in return, you file a joint stipulation to dismiss, Klein said. Then she looked at Dana, then at Marcus, who had followed without meaning to, and the temperature changed. Also, for the family's sake, we keep sensitive financial matters out of the press. Marcus's breath went wrong. That's not. Klein's smile didn't reach her eyes. We all read tea leaves. Margin calls have a way of becoming headlines when activists say no to generosity. Dana's jaw worked once, then stilled. She looked at Amara. No speech. No script. Just a mother passing a choice she'd give her life to protect. Amara stared at the folder like it might burn through the table. In the slice of glass above the door, her reflection looked older than it had that morning, and her wrists under gauze itched with remembered metal. Outside, a bailiff knocked. Back on the record. Dana breathed in, out. Elaine gathered nothing. Klein's folder sat like a mouth waiting to close. What's it going to be? Klein asked, too soft to be kind. They went back on the record. Klein's folder sat untouched on the counsel table like a mouth that wouldn't close. Elaine didn't look at it. She looked at the judge. No stipulation to dismiss, Your Honor. The judge gave the smallest nod as if a scale somewhere she couldn't acknowledge had steadied. Very well, the court will rule. A murmur moved through the gallery and died when the judge lifted her hand. First, she said, to the conduct of Officer Colin Rourke. She read the words the way surgeons name bones. Precise, unemotional, irrefutable. The court finds violations of MS. Pierce's constitutional rights, excessive force in the application of restraints, and failure to follow departmental procedure for detaining a minor. Officer Rourke is suspended without pay pending completion of mandatory training on bias and juvenile procedure and a psychological evaluation. This court further refers the matter to the Civilian Review Board for discipline. Rourke didn't twitch. He stared at a spot on the back wall, a man trying to outstare a tide. Second, the judge continued, turning to the table where Leela sat very straight, jewelry still expensive, face suddenly out of fashion. The court finds MS. Whitmore knowingly filed a false report and attempted to influence evidence through media coordination. Sentence: 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service with organizations serving youth of color, counseling, and fines. Additional charges for attempted evidence tampering are referred. Leela's mouth opened as if money could buy oxygen. Third, the judge said, to Tech Lux and Northgate Holdings. The court finds civil liability for discriminatory security practices, failure to preserve evidence, and policies that predictably result in unlawful detentions. She spoke the remedy like an inventory of repairs. A 5-year consent decree, independent monitor, transparent data reporting, staff retraining and policy overhaul, and the establishment of a $1 million scholarship fund in MS. Amara Pierce's name for students in STEM from communities disproportionately affected by retail profiling. Restitution to identified victims. Someone in the back couldn't help it. They clapped once, a single, startled sound. The bailiff cut a glance. Silence fell back into place. Elaine rose. Honor, the plaintiffs also request injunctive relief regarding camera retention policies and coordination with media partners. Granted in part, the judge said. Retention schedule to be set by the monitor. Any coordination between loss prevention and media must be documented and available to the monitor on request. Lack of documentation will be presumptive evidence of misconduct. So ordered. Klein's pen didn't move. Her jaw did. Outside, the courthouse steps filled with air again, spring light and a crowd learning how to cheer without making it about themselves. Microphones tilted. Amara felt the bandages under her sleeves the way you feel an old bruise before rain. Anything to say to people watching? A reporter called. Amara looked at the cameras and for the first time didn't think of them as traps. I asked for the tape, she said. A lot of people helped make sure it survived. Thank you. She didn't add names, she didn't need to. The house, the table, the night at 01:56 lived in the way her voice didn't shake. Dana stepped to the microphone and kept it short. No one should need a rank or a hashtag to be believed. Do better, we all know how. Chief Garvey spoke to policy. Elaine spoke to precedent. Ben stood off to the side like a boy who'd wandered into a history book and hadn't decided what that meant. Mr. Harrington cried into a napkin he pretended was allergies. Marcus didn't come down the steps. He texted from the edge of the plaza, a photo of a title transfer and a hand holding a bus pass. Sold the car, closed the margin. I'll take nights until the ledger's clean. Coffee at the garage when you're back. Proud of you, kiddo. A second message to Dana. I'll testify to everything I touched. I won't touch the fund again. I won't touch the truth again. Dana looked up and found him in the crowd. He lifted the bus pass like a flag no one but them could see. Reporters shouted about appeals, about union statements, about training that never sticks. Elaine answered with case law. Garvey promised a public audit. Klein ghosted the steps with a statement about regrettable misunderstandings and commitment to inclusion. Evans stood with his crew and didn't raise a mic. When Amara's eyes found his, he didn't pretend he was brave. He just nodded once. Late, not rotten. By late afternoon, the echo had begun. The police department posted its new camera policy draft. Retention extended, deletion logged with cause, audits quarterly. The mall put up a banner that tried not to sound like an admission. Parents wrote emails to principals about the way articulate still gets used like a compliment you earn by betraying your ancestors. A blog that had called Amara an activist ran an editor's note about new information. The note was 3 lines and no apology, but it was a subtraction. At home, a florist van delivered lilies with a card that said nothing. Amara put them on the porch beside the paper where the rocket ship still smoked toward the gutter. The text came at dusk. Not from Klein, not from Marcus. From a number Dana recognized only because she had memorized too many like it. Colonel Pierce, the message read, "This is Inspector General Krell. We need to speak." The carrier records on the intimidation text you forwarded, the "Keep this quiet" returned. The originating device belongs to Brigadier General Matthew Cole. He sits on the board of a civic foundation funded in part by Northgate's parent and a vendor used by Tech Lux. We're opening a formal conflict of interest inquiry. We'll need your statement. Please confirm receipt. Dana read it once, then again, as if comprehension had a second floor she hadn't visited. Cole had been her first boss out of selection, the one who taught her to watch the room and listen for the lie that didn't sound like a lie. He had sent congratulatory notes when Amara won science fairs, bought raffle tickets at the base picnic, smiled like mentorship. Her phone buzzed again before she could type. A second text, this time a photo. Cole shaking hands with Klein at a gala, a banner behind them reading Civic Alliance. In the corner of the frame, a familiar jawline half-cropped by the algorithm Mallory. The vets on the porch shifted, feeling the temperature change that had nothing to do with weather. Amara stepped into the doorway. "Mom," Dana looked at her daughter at the paper door, at the scholarship order still warm in the printer tray, and at the message that named a higher room where the same game played with nicer catering. "Bug," she said, steady in a way you only get by choosing it. "We're not done." A car slowed in front of the house and kept going, the pause a little too long to be nothing. The porch light clicked on by itself. Somewhere in the alley, a bottle clinked where bottles don't, an ordinary sound wearing the wrong clothes. A year redraws a map. The atrium where Amara bled under lights now smells like citrus polish and faint, nervous hope. Banners hang where the cameras used to misremember. The Amara Pierce STEM Scholarship opening ceremony. Beneath them, a brass plaque glints on a new door. Community Youth Resource Center. If you know what used to be here, the shine is louder. "Ready?" Dana asks. Amara smooths her blazer. The scars at her wrists have faded to soft commas, punctuation, not period. "As I'll ever be." People fill the seats, students with notebooks, veterans in hats, teachers clutching folders, a judge without a robe, Chief Garvey, Elaine Washington with a stack of copies, Ben in a Tech Lux polo that now says trainer above his name, Mr. Harrington, who will never admit he ironed his shirt for this. Cameras line the back wall, their lenses, finally, less hungry. The MC fumbles the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, MS, Amara Pierce." She walks the 3 steps as if they might tilt, they hold. "Last year," she says, "I asked for the tape." She doesn't widen the wound, she names repairs. "Today we open a center where kids can finish their shopping list without proving their innocence first, where a missing phone prompts a checklist, not a lineup, where security learns the difference between suspicion and procedure." She looks left, finds Ben, where the first step is check the cameras and the cameras keep their memory. A row of reporters blink. They were ready for theater, they got instructions. Garvey speaks next, all policy, retention, audit, bodycam discipline that finally uses the word shall. The independent monitor gives a short, dry report with a number that matters. Detentions of minors down 68%. A mother in the second row puts a hand to her mouth. They cut the ribbon on the center. Inside, where Amara once watched her blood stripe a table, there's a couch, a legal aid desk, a small lab bench, and a poster that makes Mr. Harrington laugh out loud. "Solder here, not online." Ben leads the first group through de-escalation 101. He holds up a pair of handcuffs and says, "These are last," like a catechism. Security guards, some older, some with tattoos that used to mean they were watched. Not paid, practice open hands and open questions. In the back, Vet Wilson nods once, then twice, like someone who has seen checklists save lives. Outside, in the main concourse, Marcus stands near a pillar with 2 paper cups. He doesn't push forward. He's clean-shaven and a little tired in the way honest work makes you. His car is long gone. The bus pass on his lanyard is worn soft. "Peppermint," he says when Amara finds him. "You hate peppermint in coffee." "I remembered," she smiles. "I hate peppermint in coffee." She sips the other one anyway. "How's the night shift?" "City doesn't sleep," he says, "but it tips better than the market." He looks at the plaque without letting the reflection catch him. "You good?" "I'm good," she says, then amends because they do truth here and tired and starting. She bumps his shoulder with hers, he bumps back. The ledger between them has entries they'll never read aloud. It also has a balance. Across the atrium, Jade lingers with a stack of flyers, media literacy for teens. She wore flats like she came to stay. When Amara passes, Jade steps forward. "Brought the cash card," she says, cheeks pink. From that, with interest, I didn't know interest could be moral. Her smile is small and new. "I'm volunteering Tuesdays." "Good," Amara says, "bring snacks, kids forgive faster when fed." Evan Brooks, suit 1 shade humbler, films a short stand-up beside the scholarship banner. "We got this wrong before," he says into the lens. "Correction is not punishment, it's maintenance." His producer lowers the camera and doesn't cut. Just nods. Late, not rotten. A cluster of scholarship finalists waits near the stage. 2 girls in thrift store blazers, a boy with oil under his nails, twins who finish each other's math. When Amara reads their names, she sees the next map. They come up shaking and sure. One slips a folded thanks into her hand with a confession scrawled across it. "My sister was followed at Northlake last year. I didn't know what to do, now I do." A music cue the mall paid for tries to make the moment swell. It doesn't need help. On a break, Dana steps out onto the balcony where guards used to watch teens through glass. Her phone vibrates. Inspector General Krell, Cole resigned. He won't get to retire his history. Hearing set for June. "We'll want your testimony on the record-keeping mess." Dana's mouth is a line that doesn't gloat. She texts back one word, confirmed. She looks down at the floor where she once pulled air through anger and counted exits. Amara joins her with a program folded into a fan. For a minute, they share quiet the way some families share a backyard, knowing the shape of each other's trees. You still carry the kit? Amara asks. Angles, timestamps, measurements, Dana says, and snacks. They laugh like a gasket taking pressure right. A jangle cuts the sound, the unmistakable chirp of a ringtone. Heads turn by instinct. A boy 8, maybe 9, pats his pockets, eyes wide. A security employee wearing the new liaison badge smiles, stoops. Check your bag first, always our step one. They do. True story, the phone is in the front pocket, face down under a comic. The boy blushes. His mother squeezes his shoulder. The liaison lifts 2 fingers toward the ceiling camera, not a salute exactly, more like a promise delivered. Applause ripples. Not big, big enough. When the last cupcake caves to gravity and the last reporter wraps a cord, evening slides into the glass like a second sky. Dana unlocks their old habit of a walk around the perimeter. The new security office smells like dry erase and coffee. The bulletin board holds a flowchart that could be a poem if you care about verbs. Assess, ask, review, only then restrain. Someone has added in Sharpie and breathe. The marker squeaked a little on the B. They're nearly to the exit when Mr. Harrington jogs up, clutching a manila envelope like it's hot. Mail for you, he pants. Came to the school by mistake, peeked. Amara slides a finger under the flap. The letterhead is a university seal that makes her stomach drop and then lift. We are pleased to offer you admission to the biomedical engineering program. Below that, a line that will be a story they tell more than once. Your work on accessible solar conversion impressed our faculty. We believe in the future you are building. Her grin lands like daylight. Dana doesn't cry. Dana chooses not to cry and fails. Okay, Amara says when oxygen returns. Now I need to build 3 prototypes and a spine. Already did, Dana says. They step into the evening. The parking lot has new lights, warmer, less interrogation, more welcome. Vet Wilson tips his cap from the bench outside the center. The moms from the PTA trade Tupperware. A kid in a hoodie holds the door for an old woman without looking at his own reflection. Ordinary wins a series, 1 point at a time. Dana's phone buzzes again. Unknown number, no preview. She almost pockets it. Almost, she answers, a woman's voice, tired and fierce. Colonel Pierce, my name's Rena Alvarez. Different state, different mall, same playbook. We've got partial footage and a lot of fear. Someone said you answer. Dana looks at Amara. Amara is already nodding like a metronome they share. We do, Dana says into the dark that isn't so dark anymore. Send what you have. We'll help you keep the tape. A motorcycle snarls down the boulevard and fades. The new plaque catches the last scrap of sun and throws it back into the atrium. Somewhere behind them, a familiar sound, now more rescue than indictment. Another ringtone chirps, brief and harmless, and a liaison's voice floats up like a benediction. Let's check the cameras. They turn toward the call, shoulders squaring the way people's do when the next room is ready to be walked into.